And first of all, I just want to thank PGC for having me here as a speaker. And of course, thank you all for coming here. That's what makes this conference so great. So, some introductions. My name is Leonard Tatum. I'm founder and CEO of Tatum Games. We created Heroes vs. Villains, which was the first collaborative collectible card game. So we rejuvenized that genre and made it more collaborative, and with teamwork and leaderboards and guilds and raids. It's pretty cool. Today we're going to be talking about how to get money for your business. I think this is something that every entrepreneur asks themselves at some point, especially in the early stages. So let's get into it. Types of capital. First, you have your fixed capital. Now, your fixed capital are your tangible items. These are basically things that you're going to be using to build your products, such as like your computers and other equipment. Not to get your things confused with like the things that you actually need to build your stuff. So these are things that you need to know in regards to speaking with whoever it is that you're interfacing with, like your banks or whatnot. You need to be able to identify that you're doing either fixed or working capital. Is another option here. So your working capital is basically what keeps you going. So these are going to be like you're paying for your inventory. It's going to be like paying for your wages and salaries and things like that. There is an equation here that's very important to know. And this is just to make sure that you're not asking for too much money. So if you follow this equation, and if you keep in mind that there's a magic ratio, then you know exactly how much money to ask for to where you're not overextending yourself. And that may affect your bottom line. And then you have your growth capital. And this is more for mature companies. So you're kind of already established at this point, and now you need to expand. Or maybe you're established, you need to pivot. And that's really where growth capital comes into play. So here's kind of the main question here, which is, how do I find the money to start my business? And whenever I'm asked this question, I'm always saying that this is basically a question about what you qualify for and what you are willing to give up to turn your dream into your dream idea into a viable business. Now, to go into this a little bit further, and let me get a little bit personal with you on this. So about 8 months after starting Tatum Games, I went through a terrible event. I was married for 15 years, and then I got a divorce. And it was something that was really devastating, especially on my business, because for 13 months, guys, I just went underground. I felt like kind of like Dave Chappelle. When something happened, Dave Chappelle just went to Africa. No one heard from him. And that's what ended up happening to me. So after those 13 months, I had to get on call with my partner. I had one partner at that time. And I was just thinking to myself, how am I going to tell him what's happened this past year? Because I've been gone. And as soon as I got on a call with him, it was so funny because he started apologizing to me. He was like, Leonard, I'm sorry I haven't been around. I know it's been about a year. What's been going on with Tatum Games? And I was like, really? That's my line. Turns out he also went through a divorce, and we just both sort of went off the rails. So we had to figure out what to do at that point. So we had to start thinking about how do we rebuild, and how do we rebuild quickly. Our solution was that we needed to get some help. We could no longer operate as just two guys and a dog. So we started hiring interns. That was our first step. We got some interns, which is something that we were resistant with because we were worried about the skill set. And what I tell you guys, this was probably one of our most important and best decisions that we made at Tatum Games. Those interns did really, really well. Better than what we expected. And the price was right. We paid them with flaming hot Cheetos. So, and they worked really hard for this delectable treat. So it was really cool. Those interns is what led us to getting our second investment. And that second investment was up to about $250,000. And I know I haven't talked about how we got our first investment, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So angels. Most of us kind of already know what an angel investor is. But let me just kind of put a little bit of more information into how much to ask, because if you ask for too much from angel investor, you're going to ruin your chances. But the average angel investment is about $50,000. You do have to consider what is your evaluation of your business. So don't just ask for any random amount. Make sure that you have intentions behind the amount of dollars that you're seeking, and that it actually matches the state in which your business is in. Another important note is that investors do expect to see a use of funds, so be sure to have all your documentation prepared. Networking. This is a huge thing. Face-to-face interaction. So going back to how we got our first investment, it was through this way. So before, what I was doing is I would go to online websites, and I was trying to find investors online, and I was emailing them and trying to make arrangements to see them face-to-face, or to have some sort of Skype call if it wasn't practical and they were in a different region. And that didn't work too well. But what I found out that worked and garnered better results was just going to networking events. So if you join meetups and if you're going to events, even like this event here, just having that face-to-face interaction is going to yield better results for you. Now, you can find angels online. Here's a couple websites that I personally used. And also social media is also a great source of finding different investors to speak with as well. Gust and Angel.co and F6S, or everyone should have profiles on these websites here. I'm going to allow for some pictures there. And then friends and family is probably your best source, especially if you're in your seed rounds. Now, some of you might be thinking, what if this isn't an option, right? And definitely I was there. I don't know if you guys are really familiar with how the 80s are, particularly in the Los Angeles area, well, particularly in the Los Angeles area. But there's a huge drug epidemic. And the result is that the people that were born in the 80s, like myself, we were affected by that. I was taken away from my parents at birth. So I ended up being homeless at a very young age. So the whole concept of getting funding from family, that wasn't an option for me. And I've never been that cool guy, so I also didn't have much friends either. So I had to figure out what to do in this sort of situation, because everyone kept pushing and saying that the best way to get some funding at this time was through friends and family. And the answer, it seems very trivial, but when you're going through the motions, it doesn't really occur to you. But the answer is just, you just have to make wealthy friends. It is actually easier than you may think. And that's actually how I got my first investment of $50,000. I was just going through different events. I met up with a guy named Madi, and I never pitched to him. We were friends first, and then just through our normal day-to-day interaction with each other, Madi actually approached me and said, "Hey, I want to be a partner in Tatum Games," and he offered to pay $50,000 for us. So that was our very first investment. Some organizations that you guys should know about, incubators and accelerators. There's so much content on these sort of companies. You guys can Google to learn more. But really, I just want you guys to know sort of a little bit of the differences between the two. Particularly is the timeline and what it is that you can actually receive for them, the type of services or perhaps some financing. So for incubators, it's an open-ended timeline, and this really is for the beginning stages of your company. And they don't typically offer capital for you. They offer different things. So they'll offer you consulting, and maybe you can use some of their facilities and things like that. Accelerators, they're meant to accelerate your growth, so there is a chance that they may give you some money. So, but the exchange is that they're going to take some equity from you. And you also go through this program through a set amount of time, usually 3 to 4 months. Some of the longer ones will last for about 6 months. And then, of course, you could also use crowdfunding. Here are some of the more popular sites, from Kickstarter to Indiegogo to GoFundMe. The thing about crowdfunding is that it's incredibly difficult in the very beginning stages, right? Because you don't have a product to really present. And definitely, I've done a Kickstarter before for Tatum Games, and it didn't really work out. And the reason why is because I was so focused on a product that was incomplete, and it's kind of the irony of it all, right? Because the whole reason why I went to Kickstarter is because my product was incomplete, but then I had to present my product that was incomplete, and people didn't want to invest in it. So what I would suggest for, if you do go this route, is instead of presenting your product, that's certainly part of it, but present yourself. I would have had better results by going on there and saying, hey, I'm a software developer, and this is my company, and just present it myself as opposed to the product. You know, talk about what it is that you really want to do. So, in conclusion, there's a lot of different options. I didn't include things like your banks and things like that, because these are certainly viable options that you could go into. But you have all of these things where when you're first starting, you're trying to learn about all the different types of capitals, funding yourself, angels. These are all the things that you're going to be learning about. And I call this kind of like your knowledge sectors. So it doesn't particularly matter where you are in these sectors. They're never going to be full. I think the only thing that's going to be full is just really your willpower and your faith. So you really have to just believe in what it is that you see for your company, that vision, and you have to have faith that it's going to work. And if you can do that, then you'll find some creative ways to make it work and happen for you. And ultimately, don't get discouraged, and definitely don't give up, because as someone like myself who's made so many mistakes running Tatum Games, then certainly anyone can get financing. Don't underestimate the power of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. It's very good. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Yes, great. Thank you very much. Any questions, guys? Anyone want to start? I've got the microphone here.
I see a couple hands here.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing your story. It was interesting. How much are you turning over now at Tatum Games compared to the time you were going through the divorce? At what stage were you at that stage?
Oh, I see.
What stage are you at now?
What has changed? So really, a lot of these things have happened just recently. What's changed is we're about 300K richer, which is great. And we just staffed up to about 20 new employees, and that happened literally in the past month. And our product is going to be released in May. So we're on a fast track of really getting things rolling and really making up for lost time.
Were there other questions?
There's someone in the back over there.
Yeah, we've got a question in the back there. I think the microphone's on its way.
There you go. Hello.
Oh.
Hello. I was wondering if you had any pitfalls, downsides to the crowdfunding, Kickstarter, that kind of thing, whether you had any advice on that.
Pitfalls?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, running a Kickstarter campaign or any other campaign is brutal. And you're going to be up all night. You're gonna be waking up in the middle of the night. You're gonna be like, did someone give me money? And then you're gonna go back to sleep. Then you're gonna wake up a minute later, like, did someone give me money? And then you're gonna go back to sleep. So literally you won't get any sleep. The thing about Kickstarter is that I think that you have to prepare months in advance. So I suggest that you prepare at least 3 to 4 months in advance. Start engaging with your audience immediately, as soon as possible. And then also, you have to, I don't want to say that you don't want to care, but you have to sort of realize that it might not work for you. And with that, you'll have a lot less stress while going through the process. Some of the pitfalls that we ran into, like I said, it was just really what we were trying to present. We tried to present a product that it just wasn't appealing enough, and it was because it was so early. But you really have to put out yourself. So I would say that if you want success in Kickstarter, present yourself first, and then make it your product second, until you're more established, until you have a very solid product.
I mean, I can double that, because I mean, we had probably 30-odd articles, it created in advance, like 6 videos created in advance, and we ended up basically producing like 42 items in the end, and about 20 videos. It was, we completely underestimated, with the Rock Horror game that we did, completely underestimated the amount of effort required, and we had I was told by Luke, who runs the game side for Kickstarter, was one of the most pre-prepared that I'd ever seen. So it really depends on your audience already being on Kickstarter, and unfortunately it turned out that Rocket Horror 1 wasn't. So we had to take them there, and it's incredibly hard to do that. So if you can focus on something like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever, is make sure you understand the audience that's already there.
Yes.